Capital punishment, or the death penalty, is a heated debate topic in global politics. 56 countries continue to implement capital punishment today into their justice systems, while 139 countries have abolished the death penalty completely. I find this topic to be fascinating as it cross-analyzes a state's religion, cultural norms, regime type, and legal systems. For example, many Western democratic countries who pride themselves on the consent of the governed have abolished capital punishment due to public support of its eradication. Other countries, such as Islamic states in the Middle East, are governed by religious values and declare that the death penalty is clearly the will of their God. As I've explored this topic in my own life, I've come to understand that the issue is more complex than just a simple ethical question. For example, capital punishment often has the dilemma of racism within justice systems. For instance, in the United States, the country's population is 13% black. However, nearly 42% of death row inmates across state prisons are black. Clearly, there's a stark disparity in the statistics that implicates a bias against black inmates in criminal sentencing. Earlier in the semester, our class discussed democracy and regime types across the world. In this lecture, we were provided with a map entitled Global Freedom Status. I compared this map with a map entitled Death Penalty Worldwide. In my analysis, I discovered a trend between the two sets of data. The death penalty tends to be legal in authoritarian states, whereas democratic states tend to have outlawed the practice of capital punishment. In further research, I uncovered that the death penalty is used by authoritarian regimes as a way to demonstrate state power. Such regimes will report criminal executions as a positive news story, a demonstration of the state's ability to crack down on crime. This fear-mongering tactic keeps citizens in line, as individuals are less likely to protest against a government who has the power and willingness to take their life. Regime type and democratic status represent another layer of the issue and highlight the ability of capital punishment to be used as a weapon against the people. In class, we discussed the concept of democratic transition, including the conduction of elections, types of transitions, and economic and cultural determinants of democratization. However, we did not dive deep into the concepts of why countries stay in their regime type. I would find it fascinating to explore not only why regime types change, but also why they stay in place. Many countries have long-standing government types, both democratic and authoritarian. Within each of these regimes, there is a history of capital punishment. Some states have enforced the death penalty for centuries, and its practice has become an ingrained cultural norm. I believe it plausible to assume that when a law exists in a country for decades, or even centuries, it becomes established as a part of society. For my case study, I chose Taiwan. Prior to Taiwan's democratization in 1987, the death penalty was widely practiced. However, the Taiwanese government did not report nor document the number of executions that occurred. When martial law was absolved in 1987, Taiwan embraced a democratic form of government. As the government began to introduce reforms, the number of executions in Taiwan dropped dramatically. This trend would continue until the year 2005, when executions would halt completely under President Chen. Chen, the president of Taiwan from 2000 to 2008, remains an important historical figure in Taiwanese death penalty rhetoric. To date, Chen is the only Taiwanese president to formally support the abolition of the death penalty. Despite the fact that 70% of Taiwanese citizens supported capital punishment, Chen emphasized that the practice was a violation of human rights. Shi Maolin, who served as Taiwan's Minister of Justice from 2005 to 2008, wrote a plan to gradually abolish capital punishment. She understood that abolition would depend on public opinion and support from the people. Succeeding Shi as Master of Justice was firm abolitionist Wang Qingfeng. In 2010, Wang was harshly criticized by a legislature for her refusal to approve the executions of death row inmates. Due to public opposition to her stance, Wang resigned from her position in 2010. In November 2022, a public opinion poll demonstrated that 87% of Taiwanese citizens support capital punishment. Clearly, public rhetoric indicates that the people are in support of the death penalty. This high percentage of approval is rather surprising, as citizens residing in democratic states such as Taiwan tend to favor abolition. However, it is important to remember that Taiwan retains deep ties with Chinese culture. In China, the death penalty is justified through the people's interpretations of Confucius values. Likely, these same ideals have diffused into Taiwanese cultural values, thus giving an explanation for the immense outpouring of public support. Taiwan is an excellent example of the idea that the death penalty rhetoric and legislation incorporates so many aspects, including a state's religion, cultural norms, regime type, and legal system. It is essential to retain a globalist perspective when analyzing the concept of capital punishment, understanding the multifaceted dimensions of such a topic.